My name is Ranjeet Kaile. I'm Director of Communications at South London and the Maudsley, but I'm also Director of Communications at South East London Integrated Care Board. And I do genuinely feel this is a calm amidst a storm, and it's really good we're making time to have these conversations, because one of the other things I'm dealing with a number of other colleagues is a cyber attack at the moment that's taking place. But if we don't carve out these moments, then we lose these moments. So I think it's a really good thing we're doing it. So I have seen all the comments in the chat about the practical tips that people want, and I know that you're going to do a little survey at the end. So I'm terrified, Rich. I better make sure I get some good tips out there. But let me just take us back. So as Zoe said, in 2021, in the midst of COVID, imagine in the midst of COVID, South London Maudsley, new chief executive, new chair, Sir Norman Lamb and David Bradley, chief executive. We're very keen that actually we need to be able to think about a new direction for the organisation with a strategy. So with the support of Zoe and Kaleidoscope and colleagues, what we recognised was that we can't go about doing the same thing, that just the strategy that sits on a dusty shelf and doesn't make a difference. This fundamentally has to be owned by our staff. And we've got significant challenges in the areas we serve, the communities and other aspects of our work, and we've got to be able to make sure this lasts and has a legacy beyond the fact that we just published a strategy and ticked the box. So just a quick snapshot. There is no perfect solution to any of this. So even what I talk about isn't going to be perfect, lots of different ways of doing it, but this is the way we did it and the way it worked for us. We engaged through this group, we'll talk about in a moment, LIA, empowered a group of staff. They engaged 654 people through drop-in sessions, workshops, ward visits. We had focus groups dedicated to specific teams of people. Numbers of different groups and community organisations joined those sessions. Over 55 organisations helped formulate part of our strategy. We had 54 staff briefings with over 520 attendees, and we had an online survey with 110 responses. But I'm going to just drill down very specifically on the Listen to Action group. And this is where I want to try and give you some practical examples whereby what we recognise was that this can't be board driven in its entirety. What the board can do is provide some direction, but actually what we did was we went out to the whole organisation to say we want to second over 12 staff 1 day a week to be able to work through a period of time over 6 months on helping us listen to our staff, to get really deep at a grassroots level to understand what makes a difference for our staff group. And so we held a secondment process. We held some interviews. We had loads of people responding, wanted to get involved in this. We made it as fair and transparent as possible. So when we were selecting the group, what we wanted to make sure was it wasn't just the usual voices. It wasn't just people who are constantly talking about particular issues, but actually this was much broader. So we had people from IT, we had psychological therapist staff, we had clinicians, we had ward managers, we had corporate staff. So a real range of folk that could get involved and represent our staff and be able to have those conversations with legitimacy. And that was a really important thing, because what they felt was they were actually having a hotline to the board. And I think we've kind of talked about how important it is for people to be seen and heard. So making the process fair and transparent as much as possible is really, really important, so people can buy into the group and they just don't think it's the usual suspects. And then the other thing we did was making sure that we stayed really in close contact with this group throughout the process. So weekly meetings to hear feedback, take the feedback, understand the feedback, help the group stay connected and gelled, and also to make sure that there wasn't one person in the group that was taking over or shaping the agenda. It was a very fair and appropriate conversation we taking place. So you have to be able to build and that sense of connectedness and consensus, and actually transformational change. They can believe the change they're listening to from the staff, and the impact it will have on our strategy is really important. And by staying connected is a key thing. And we'd often invite our chair, Sir Norman Lamb, or our chief executive to be in those groups. But also, more importantly, so once people are collecting their feedback, we had regular intervals where they would feed that back to the whole executive to say, this is what we're hearing on our wards, in our staff, in our communities. This is what we think needs to happen. So they weren't just listening, they were also helping us to start to think about how we can start to co-produce and create the solutions, which was hugely important to be able to make sure they felt with a sense of legitimacy to the people they're listening to. Something is going to change, and that's really important because they have to make it really clear what is going to be different as a result of this ownership. A couple of other things I was just going to talk about very quickly is ownership and celebration. These people are giving their time, commitment, they're demonstrating their passion for making change happen, and you've got to be able to, one, give people the ownership and the opportunity to do that. So that's by giving people the time and not trying to get them to do it on top of their day jobs, but also then celebrating them. So giving them the opportunity to feed back to the whole organization. Remember, we were in COVID, so we would hold all staff events with over 200-300 people joining at a time, and they would be presenting, not myself or director of strategy or chief executive. It would be our listen to action group talking about, this is what we've heard, these are the themes, this is what we're doing next, come and join us. And that was really important. It feels slightly risky in a sense, but actually it was absolutely the right thing to do, to put them front and center, because then with real confidence we can say the strategy is built on what people have told us. So giving colleagues a platform to recognise, celebrate is really important. Now, two things happened out of this. So one was we had a strategy that was representative of what our staff and communities had told us, and that's really important. We'll put the link into the chat. In 2021 is when it was published. And the feedback from staff groups and others went directly in strategy into our 5 strategic ambitions. And that's great, fantastic. Publish a strategy, done, and lots of work taking place across the organisation. But for me, on the engagement side, more fundamentally, was what happens to all that other listening that doesn't go anywhere. So the procurement system's broken. I can't even order a computer. I can't get a screen replaced in the ward. And what we did was we then created another work program from all of the listening, which was called the Brilliant Basics, that ran over 18 months, which was then every 6 months we would give an update back to the whole organization. So you told us these things don't work, and these are the actions that are taking place as a result of it. So none of the listening was lost. It was captured as part of another work stream, which was about how do we deal with those day-to-day changes that have a massive impact on people's kind of working environment, and what can we do to demonstrate how that works. So I think it's really important to recognize you have the hard aspects of the strategy being produced, but through all the listening, but then you have the soft element of Brilliant Basics demonstrating that you've listened and you're making a difference on what really matters to people. So I think they were the two things that I would talk about, but I'll stop there and hand back to yourself. Thank you.